thank you guys for joining me here on the High Ground podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited tonight to kind of break into it and get some solid critiques here on the sequel trilogy. I've seen a lot of you guys post insightful comments that we've had great discussion in the comments, as well as your guys' videos. So I'm happy to bring you guys on to talk about it. First thing is I will have us kind of go around and, first start by introducing yourself. Who are you? How'd you get into Star Wars? And I'm curious what your top three are. Ryan P?
All right, yeah. My name's Ryan, Star Wars Facts on TikTok. And I got into Star Wars when I was younger. I was watching, the Clone Wars series. I was like 7, 8 at the time. But when I became a serious fan was actually like last year. So actually about a year from now. So November of last year. And my friend's like, we should watch Revenge of the Sith. And I was like, you know what? I'm not really a big Star Wars fan anymore, but I don't really care for these movies. But I was like, all right, I'll watch it. And I got hooked, man. I am obsessed with prequels especially, but really all Star Wars. My top three are going to be Revenge of the Sith, Empire Strikes Back, and Phantom Menace, actually.
I love the Phantom Menace too.
Yeah, Shaylee was on my
great.
Phantom Menace. Like, I knew Shaylee was awesome because we had like this shared love of Jedi power battles. And yeah, that was my life growing up. But nice. Shaylee, same question.
Well, like you just said, Jedi power battles was a big part of my introduction to Star Wars. I can't remember the first time I saw the Phantom Menace, but my dad, like as soon as I was able to talk, my dad was like, okay, let's watch Star Wars. And we watched it. I would like rewind the Phantom Menace on the VHS and watch it over and over and over. And we would play Jedi power battles. And every time he'd come home from work, I'd come running and be like, can we play the game? It's so fun. So yeah, and then I've just been obsessed ever since. And then because of TikTok, I became more vocal about the obsession. So it's always been there, but now it's just like in your face. My top three are Rogue One, The Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker.
Okay. And then Ryan Kramer.
All right. So I'm Ryan Kramer. I got into Star Wars. My dad probably got me into it when I was like 4 years old. I remember really wanting to watch Revenge of the Sith, but my parents wouldn't let me. And then when I was 6 years old, I was sick at home. And my mom, she was the real one against me watching Revenge of the Sith. And my dad, he showed it to me. And I had to keep it a secret from her for like 2 years that I had watched it. Yeah. And my top three movies are probably Empire Strikes Back as a real top one. That one probably ranks as one of my favorite movies of all time. And then probably a tie between Revenge of the Sith and Return of the Jedi, I think.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And then again, I always share. I've was watching a VHS tape of The Empire Strikes Back until the actual tape broke, like the tape part broke.
Oh, no.
Oh my gosh.
So I've seen it a lot, and that one is my favorite. My top three are Empire, The Last Jedi, and then Return of the Jedi are my top three. But yeah. I'm super stoked to jump in here and kind of dig into this.
Yeah.
So first question for, and this one I'll start with Shaylee. How is the Star Wars community in general, and what can we do better?
My answer is actually kind of changed from like very recently because a while back when I first started, there was like I don't know what happened, but there's just wave of people that would like comment like, this is why women don't deserve rights on my Star Wars videos. And I'd be like, whoa. And it was a lot of them. But actually, because of recent events, I'm thinking that it's actually just the minority that's very loud, that they're very, very loud. I think overall the community is pretty good. And you're talking specifically on TikTok?
In general, but I mean, obviously, where you are the most is going to affect what you
Mm.
run into the most. I've noticed it is very different on TikTok than it is on Reddit or
Yeah, I won't even go
on.
near Reddit.
It's worst on YouTube. Honestly, YouTube is kind of the worst.
YouTube.
I mean,
Yeah,
you have the fights on YouTube, I think at least, like they get pretty heated. And you have the biggest, I think TikTok, you have a lot more people who like the sequels on TikTok than people who uh and you're going to have the opposite on YouTube, where at least the creators I've experienced, you have a lot more people who dislike the sequels on YouTube, at least more large platformed people on YouTube disliking the sequels.
Yeah, and I
yeah,
mean, the saying goes, the people who hate Star Wars the most are Star Wars fans. That's what people say. I mean, it's kind of true. If you're a prequel fan and if you're a guy, you're more likely to experience less hate. But I mean, I would say the Star Wars community in general. I think that there's some great communities. There's a lot of great parts, but it just gets really toxic when it comes to the sequels. I mean, if you express that you're a big sequel fan, then there's going to be, especially I would say the most on Reddit, but even on TikTok, if you're like, for example, Ray cosplayers, they get a lot of hate. It's unfortunate. I mean, let people just love what they like, you know?
yeah, yeah. It's true, very true. And so, and I didn't want to cut anyone short. Like Ryan, either Ryan, if you have any more thoughts on it.
I think that it's probably the most toxic when you talk about the sequels, yeah, because if you're talking about like the Clone Wars or the Mandalorian, like it does not get toxic at all when people are discussing those like things. Like you'll talk about Clone Wars and people will say, okay, yeah, Clone Wars succeeds the best at Umbara, and it's at its worst at like Droid Squad, and you're not going to see anyone like debating that. They're going to agree, and it comes down to, do you think the Clone Wars is better overall because of those really good things, or do you think the Clone Wars is a bit overrated? It's not like this giant argument like it is the sequels. And I think one of the big things about the sequel camp is it's either amazing or it sucks. And those are like your two things on the sequels. Whereas on the Clone Wars, there's people who are like, oh, it's good. And there are people like, it's mediocre. And, you don't get that huge like contrast. If somebody says, oh, I didn't find the Clone Wars that good, somebody might say, oh, you didn't. But if somebody says like, I like the sequels, you're going to get a lot of people. And I mean, I've done it a bit. Like, I'll be like, what? And I'll like try to start like bombarding them with questions and stuff like that. So I will admit I've been guilty of that, but it's sort of like two very different mediums in the two things.
It is, and that's true. It's and kind of the reason I ended up in the position I am in is because I was part of the group that got pushed out of Star Wars because I liked the prequels when they came out, and everyone hated the prequels. I had people like, you like the prequels? We can't be friends anymore. I'm like, are you kidding?
Crazy.
So
like poetry, it repeats.
so yeah, that is what pushed me out of Star Wars for a long time. And so now, even though the sequels are like my least favorite trilogy, I think there's good things in everything. But and I just wanted to kind of cover up this kind of stuff before we dig into the movie, so I hope that that's okay. But just real quick, because the words toxicity and gatekeeper, they get thrown around a lot, and so I'm curious for everyone of what it means, because I've seen toxic people on both sides. Actually, I've met some Raylo fans who are the most toxic people I've ever seen on anything. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys think of those two things mean. And I'll start with Ryan Kramer.
So to me, a gatekeeper at least is someone who makes it very difficult for new fans to come into the series. Like they're going to be the people who they're not going to stop until they're assured that you know everything they do. If you aren't up to date on every little medium about the lore, they are going to push you out of it, and it kind of keeps new people from really getting involved. At least a good example to me, in my experience, I'll get off Star Wars for a second, is in the reenactment community. That place is really toxic towards new people. Like I'm young, so I of course don't have the money to buy all the cool gear that some reenactors do. And they get really toxic if you're not completely 100% movie accurate. or not movie accurate, but historically accurate. And I think the same thing could go with like Star Wars cosplayers. Like they design a homemade costume and then a bunch of people just like make fun of them. And it's like gatekeeping because they might not have the money to buy this $3,000 costume that some people do, while other people can. And I think just gatekeeping is, you know, keeping people out of the community who are new because they aren't as experienced with it as you are.
Okay, cool. And then your thoughts on what constitutes like toxicity?
What constitutes toxicity? I would say like anything that, I don't know, anything that puts other people down and it's like a negative. I think you've said this before. Toxicity is anything that adds more negative than it does positive towards the community.
All right, cool. And then other Ryan?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you nailed it with the gatekeeping. I mean, imagine you just got out of the movie theaters with Force Awakens. You're like, I can't wait to like talk to some cool internet people about it. And they're like, you like that movie? Oh my God, dude, you're stupid. You don't know anything about Star Wars. And then they're like, oh wow, sorry, I'm not going to participate in social media stuff when it comes to Star Wars or really anything like that. And I mean, cosplayer people, like you were saying, they put so much effort into that stuff. And then you're like, oh, that belt is inaccurate. That's not screen accurate. Completely redo it. It's really, really bad. I mean, what I would constitute as being toxic would just be any answer where you know you could have this be an opportunity where you explain the right answer, or maybe you explain why something that someone's saying isn't necessarily right. And you, instead of doing that, you decide to just be aggressive and rude. That's what I would say would toxicity would be.
Interesting. Okay, I like that. By that definition, I have definitely been toxic a few times, but
Oh yeah.
but that's why I'm asking, because you know I love hearing other people's perspectives because it's always different. Shaylee?
Gatekeeping's, you know, they already pretty much nailed it. And like anytime you're like devaluing someone's or lowering their validity as a fan or trying to, or like over stuff that they do or don't like about the movies, that's pretty, I think gatekeeping is pretty easy to spot and self-explanatory. But like for me, toxicity is something that we tend to not understand. Like when you're doing it, you're not understanding that you're being toxic, because I just pulled an example like from one of my videos, but it goes anyway. Like I've seen it against all the trilogies, but anytime like a comment where your goal is to bring down the person posting. So like some people think that when I say that, I mean like you can't disagree with me, but that's literally not true. Like you can have discussion, but there's a difference between discussion and like trying to put somebody down. So like here's two comments, like on a Ray video I made. Somebody who was, it's like non-toxic discussion would be, I disagree. The way her character was written just felt like whiplash. It's so inconsistent. And I was like, they're just stating their opinion. Like that's not toxic. They're not like putting me down. Here's a toxic comment. If you like Ray, you're too dumb to know how to breathe. Let me help. Inhale, exhale. So it's like there's an obvious difference if you're like, you can disagree all you want, but if your goal is to just put the person down, that's pretty toxic. There's no need for it. It's just unnecessary and negative. So if you're the line is like, if you're actually adding to discussion without putting people down, but we tend to put our disagreements out there in very derogatory ways, and that is very toxic. I think that's something we tend to look over when it comes to toxicity.
Yeah, and then I mean, you guys just kind of nailed all of those. Like to me, you know, sometimes, and also you can catch people on bad days, or maybe the tone of your video that was misunderstood, or you know, those types of things happen. But one thing that I do sometimes is if someone does post something that's really toxic, I actually go take a look at their page. And what I find is if like I'll look at like their last 10 videos, and if all of them are bashing stuff, I'm like, okay, this person is taking away from the community and not adding to it. You know what I mean? But I love discussion, open discussion. Also, and that's another thing. Sometimes we can, like I said, we can misread tone. So sometimes I am asking a question, and it could be perceived as toxic, or people ask me a question and I'll answer with a question and they're like, hey man, like calm down. I'm like, wait, no, I'm not. No, just I'm curious. Like, I want to know how you got there, you know? So we can all be guilty of it really easily. And so it's, yeah, I mean, now that we've gotten those out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the films. So first one, obviously, Force Awakens. Let's go with, we're gonna do, you know, what you like, what you dislike, and what you would have done differently. And this one, I'm starting with Ryan Kramer.
All right, so Force Awakens, where to start? What I liked about it, the visuals. The visuals in the sequels are the best out of any Star Wars trilogy. They have the best visuals out of any Star Wars movies. I think they're some of the best directed movies like I've ever seen. Force Awakens, amazing soundtrack. I think it has the best score of the sequel trilogy. It's a lot different than any other Star Wars movies, which is really cool. Just kind of ironic given how similar Force Awakens is to New Hope. I really liked the whole Finn as a stormtrooper thing. I wish they would have done more with it, but I really did like Finn as a stormtrooper. Han Solo, Harrison Ford, he kind of acted like he didn't care that much, but I mean, he's Harrison Ford and I really like him. Um, I think this is the movie that I dislike Rey's character the most in, but we're still doing likes, that things that I liked. So I don't know. Obviously, Han and Leia coming together, that scene where they like hug and their theme plays, that's obviously like a really good scene. And then, yeah, just how the music interacts with the scenes, I really like. I think it's a really good visual and music movie. That's really the key takeaways that I got from it, at least. As for things I didn't like, I'm going to say this about every sequel film, the villains. I think the sequels probably had the poorest villain choice out of any movie. I think that if you're going to make any argument for Rey being a Mary Sue, The Force Awakens is going to be your movie where you're going to have the best arguments to do that. And then, I don't know, just the villains. I mean, Kylo Ren, he's, I think, a very poor villain when you match him up against Darth Vader, Count Dooku, Darth Sidious. Like Darth Vader, he's extremely scary when you see him the first time. He calmly looks at you, chokes you, and then goes, "Apology accepted, Captain Nita." There's like no emotion. It's like super cold. Kylo Ren, on the other hand, his like kills of his own guys or like emotional outbursts are played for laughs. Like he just has an emotional outburst over, I think when they can't find BB-8 or something, and he starts slashing his lightsaber all over the place, and they just have two stormtroopers walk up and then turn away. And it's just like two very different mediums. Like Kylo Ren is so much, I don't know, he's not as scary as like Darth Vader or Count Dooku. Like if you walk up to Darth Vader or Count Dooku, it's like they mean business. But if you walk up to Kylo Ren, it's kind of like, oh wow, this guy's emotionally needy. Let's just try not to piss him off.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, I feel like just the villains in general, the First Order officers are always screaming their heads off. Meanwhile, the Imperial officers were always super calm and collected, and they'd like just have these super casual discussions, and it was super cold, and it's like this super like eerie environment, as opposed to the comical villains that I think the First Order has. And I don't know, I think that's just my major problem with these movies, is definitely their villain choices and how they're just so Disney. And by Disney, I mean like the cartoonish kind of villains, like always screaming, always over the top, you know, and they're just not, I don't know, like real
Menacing
people.
enough.
Yeah, menacing enough. And I guess like that's going to be my major gripe with The Force Awakens. Also, that they killed off the Jedi Order after it having only existed for like 30 years. Obviously, that has nothing to do with the movie. It's just how I would have seen it. Like, to me, I'm going to have bias against the Republic not being that like strong influence in the galaxy, or like the Jedi not existing. as those are things I would have liked to see in a sequel trilogy, how the Jedi are recovering or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I'm gonna have bias against that. Obviously, they chose to take a direction, and that's nothing against the movie. That's just my personal opinions on the sequel trilogy that I disliked where they took it. So I was never gonna love these movies.
Okay, that's totally fair. And Ryan P.
Yeah, so I actually rewatched these movies for like the first times in months. Maybe it might even been like a couple years since I saw Last Jedi and Force Awakens, but I rewatched them. I actually like them a lot more than I did before. Um, so I guess I'll start off with what I liked. And I have a bunch of notes because I was like taking notes as I was watching the movies. So I really like the lonely, scavenger lifestyle that Rey has in the beginning. She knows she's lonely and she knows that she's really all by herself, but she kind of accepts it. She looks like she's having fun. We see her looking, drifting off in this, looking in the stars. So I like that she had that nice attitude. Um, and I also like that Rey and Finn, from the start, they clearly have that what's right mentality. That what would Luke Skywalker do? They kind of have that in them. And I think BB-8 is one of the best droids in the Skywalker, or really in all of Star Wars. I mean, from the noises he makes to his demeanor, BB-8, I would say top three droid. All the scenes with Leia and Han, they were great. I liked them. They clearly have chemistry on screen. I also liked, I think the vibe that the First Order, or like, creative wise, I think they were going for like a really Nazi type vibe, with the way that they salute when they're
Mm-hmm.
at the Starkiller base, and just like with the long red flags, it really reminded me of some Nazi um, style there. But what I didn't like in the movies was Kylo was just not menacing at all. Um, and when he tries to be intimidating or scary with this weird voice thing in his mask, um, where what did I say? Uh, he tries to be intimidating towards like Poe. Doesn't work. Poe makes fun of him. Tries to be intimidating towards that old man in the beginning, which I forget his name.
Laura
But
Santeca.
yes, he tries to be menacing towards him. He just belittles him. Doesn't even acknowledge the things that Kylo Ren was trying to say to him. Uh, and yeah, so like he's not scary. I also think Phasma was underused in this movie. I think it would have been cool to see a little bit more of her. They did a better job of that with Last Jedi, but Phasma looks awesome. She's a really cool character. I would have liked to see a little bit more. And I think there was some space where they could put that in.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's actually an answer to this. I don't really know it, but how did the First Order get this big in a span of like 34 years? I mean, they got huge.
Well, we don't know how big they are, and that's kind of like the big question I think coming out of the movie is like how
Mhm.
big is the First Order? Is the Resistance just like an underground resistance in the territory that the
Mm-hmm.
First Order controls, or is this like a galactic struggle? I think that's one of the big questions that you have with these
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah,
And I'm definitely going to cover that, but I agree that that answer should have been more prevalent in the films.
right.
Um, but yeah, does that also cover the things you would have done differently, like Phasma
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff?
so with differently, I get that it's a female character. They really want to establish that look, she's not a Mary Sue. She can do her things. She knows a lot about she knows she's a pilot, knows a lot about ships. She can clearly fight. But I think with Han, Finn, and Poe, they definitely showed some misogynistic comments, which I don't really think were in their character. So anytime really Rey is brought up that she knows about ships or she knows about control rooms and in the ships, especially Han, like they're all surprised, like what, you know this, um, which I guess I don't really know how to, I guess, answer it, but I don't think it was needed to kind of make them be so surprised. I mean, Han is someone who's in the Han Solo's been with Leia. She is obviously a very compatible person, so I don't think he would be surprised to see another female
Yeah, he
be
knows how strong women can be.
exactly, yeah, exactly. Also, the lightsaber fights. That's just the biggest, one of the biggest things for me. Um, I get that Rey is not a trained, she's not trained with a lightsaber, so she wouldn't really know what she's doing. But Kylo, I think Kylo is certainly one who's been trained by Luke Skywalker, obviously. I think he knows how to use a lightsaber. But that's kind of my opinion. I know a lot of people aren't fans of the prequel kind of lightsaber style. I am though, so that's something I would like to see more of. And lastly, the soundtrack. I really like this soundtrack, but personally, I would like to hear a little bit more original soundtracks in certain places. Um, which I get it. They don't want to just copy and paste the music from all the other movies, but I think it with some of the soundtracks, it would be cool to add a lot more of the original sounds, which they
Yeah.
did a good job in the first place. But I'd say a little bit more. But that's kind of all I'd have to say about Force Awakens.
All right, cool. And then Shaylee, same question. Likes, don't
Um,
likes, and things that would change.
so likes, I think J.J. Abrams has a strength for setting up really awesome characters, like introducing them in really awesome ways. So I really love his setup for Rey's character. I think I was rewatching it today and I was just kind of blown away by how like well laid out it was, like from the very beginning when we first meet her. I like her character's personality because we tend to put female characters in this box where like to be powerful you have to be very stoic and you have to be kind of reject traditional femininity. So like some examples would be like Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Katniss from Hunger Games was one that somebody used recently, and I was like, well, she's pretty stoic and rejects femininity. But Rey is very interesting because, like, from the beginning, we learned that one of her defining things is that she's very empathetic and she's very caring, but she's also strong. And I just think that that's something you don't get to see a lot. But I love her character, and we get introduced pretty quickly to sort of her trauma and like that kind of defines her journey for the rest of the sequels. Her like journey for belonging and identity and stuff. I thought The Force Awakens laid it out really beautifully, and like her hero's journey I just love her hero's journey in The Force Awakens. I think it's really great. And then the other thing, I love Rey and Finn's dynamic and their chemistry. Oh my gosh, I wish that had been utilized more in the future because it's so good. Every scene they're in together is so good. And it's just really beautiful how like Finn is like the first person to come back for Rey, and you can see how like it impacts her, and it's just such a good dynamic. I love it. As far as stuff I didn't like about The Force Awakens.
So I real quick to add to that,
Yeah.
it's just a small note in the novelization. And I'm one of the weird people that actually prefer the books to movies and stuff in general. But she actually says that he asks, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "No one's ever asked me if I was okay before."
Oh my god,
in my life.
it's so good.
So, but yeah, continue.
I love them. What I don't like, Starkiller Base. I really don't like Starkiller Base. I like the idea of like the First Order came to like an old Empire facility, like mining facility, and kind of used what was already there on Ilum. I love that stuff. I just don't like. I feel like it was just a little too much. Where it was like we can destroy 5 planets at once, no biggie. And it was just like, oh, that's a lot. That's very powerful. I just feel like it was a little like let's reel it back. And as far as things I would change, I love The Force Awakens. Starkiller Base is probably the only thing I would change, and like that similarity. It's different than A New Hope because there was like multiple plot lines going on woven in. But as far as like the super weapon plot line, I would have changed it to something a little more original. It's fine. I just don't love it. Starkiller Base for me is like, let's just not talk about it. I don't love it.
Yeah, I mean, I love all those thoughts. For me, I mean, there's a lot of things that I like. I certainly think that the overall, I think Ryan Kramer, you mentioned it, but the directing and kind of the cinematography and stuff of all these movies is really good. And personally, I mean, this is kind of where we come down to perspectives. I actually really liked Kylo Ren because he wasn't Vader. So when you first watch the movie, you know, he is this guy in a mask and he seems powerful and he stops the bolt and you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. Um, and it's halfway through the movie that he takes off the mask. And I mean, unlike a lot of women, I thought he was the ugliest thing I've ever seen. He looked like a wet dog. So when he takes it off, I was like, what?
Yeah.
All right. Any credit you had is gone now. But I always looked at him as a co-protagonist and not directly an antagonist. But I mean, that little small shift kind of changes it to where he's trying to reach the Vader scariness and he just can't do it. It's just not in him, you know? There was, you know, I did like Finn's introduction. And I think some of the creatures and all this stuff were looked really cool. The big Hapabore that's like drinking from the water was disgusting and awesome, and I love it. But yeah, there's a few things. I also am not a huge fan of Starkiller Base. The thing I hate the most is that as to how Han Solo used hyperspace to get through the shield and jumped out before dying, running into the planet. And of course, I mean, the planet would eventually pull you out of hyperspace, but like that whole scene just didn't make any sense to me, and that bugged me. And also, as a director, and this is going to be the same with the last movie, I feel like J.J. Abrams is too focused on playing off of nostalgia than he is, you know, creating something. It's interesting in Bob Iger's book, which is a really good book. I recommend everyone reads it, even just for business reasons. But he talks about how George Lucas felt hurt because they didn't go with his script for this movie. And Bob Iger said, I decided not to go with the script because I wanted to, I understand this is for the next generation or whatever, but I want to try and bring the older generation with it. And that's why I'm going to do it this way. And overall, I think it hurt the whole franchise because it gave people expectations of, okay, if this feels like it's copying, that means that, okay, Rey's the new Luke, and then Poe has to be the new Han Solo. And it automatically makes everyone fall into these categories. And then if they aren't falling into those perfectly, then, you know, you can't like it because they're not doing it right. You know what I mean? Like, they started out the trilogy on rails, and it's hard to get off of those rails once you start. If that makes any sense to anyone.
That's actually really interesting when you think about that. Yeah, I like that.
Also, just heads up, and I know we have a lot to say on all these movies. If we could kind of run through them a little quicker, and then I want to add, I know it's not in the notes, but after we do Rise of Skywalker, I want us to do reflections of the entire trilogy as a whole so that we can carry things through. You know what I mean? So we can run through these quicker, and then we can spend more time on that part. But yeah, jump into the next movie, Last Jedi. And we'll start with Ryan Pressler.
All right. So first thing I loved the most about this movie was Luke's death. I think that was enough to make a grown person cry. That was so good. What a perfect ending to his kind of character arc. I think in this movie, the theme of hope was really big, and they really made it a big theme. Bigger than Force Awakens for sure. And I think that's just a big theme in Star Wars movies in general, hope, you know. And I really liked how they did that with Last Jedi. I like that they added Poe and Leia connection. You know, Poe he loves Leia. And I think that was a really great decision to add that dynamic there. And yeah, I liked the movie. From start to finish, I was able to be like, all right, this is good to watch. It makes sense to me. What did I dislike though? I didn't really like the Luke tossing the lightsaber. I know in universe and how Disney did it, that was in character for him to throw that lightsaber because, you know, he's kind of given up at this point. But and even Mark Hamill has said, I don't think that was in Luke Skywalker to even go down to such a hopeless route. That's probably one of the biggest things I disliked about this movie is that I don't think Luke Skywalker would have lost hope like he did in this. Um, I actually liked Holdo for the most part, but the way that she treated Poe, I think that was just not the best way she could have handled it. She could have been more upfront. It kind of seemed like she was gatekeeping information from him, which I think she could have just handled that a little bit better. Um, the Praetorian Guard scene, although it looked amazing on screen, it looked great. I just think the choreography was kind of wonky with the Praetorian Guards, for sure. I mean, if you slow it down, you see a lot of just weird extra movements that weren't necessary. And the fact that they could barely beat a bunch of force sensitive or non-force sensitive guards, and these are two super powerful force users. I thought that was weird. What I would have done differently, I would have made Kylo more intimidating. I would have had more scenes where Daisy Ridley gets more training. Or I mean, I say Daisy Ridley because I mean like the actual actor. I think if she got more training with lightsaber combat, that would reflect better in the movie. And kind of random, but more puppet characters. I think puppet characters is a theme. We see it in Mandalorian with the child, and in all the other trilogies. I think that'd be cool to see. The CGI was great, but I think puppet themes is kind of a theme there. And the way that lightsaber dynamics work, they don't really do shallow cuts. I think we've seen in all the movies that is slice and dice. It doesn't just give someone like with Kylo's face, although that was in Force Awakens, but they're not. And like when they're cutting up the Praetorian Guards, they don't. It should just like slice right through them. At least that's what I think when I think of a lightsaber. It kind of just cut them like it was a katana. But that's really all I have to say for Last Jedi.
Yeah. Okay. And then also there's something I actually said I was going to talk about on the last one, and I didn't. But one of the other things I didn't like in The Force Awakens was that, believe it or not, Star Wars is about politics. We needed more politics.
Yeah.
And I think that I also think that the overall reception would have been much better if it was explained how, first of all, the resistance is not the rebels, right? Those are two different things. The rebels ended as soon as the war ended because there's no reason for them to exist. Also, the First Order is not the Empire. And they were able to grow because no one really knew that they existed. They were from outside of the far reaches. And as they came in and started taking over things, they were cutting off communication. So this section is now just cut off. But the New Republic is so fractured that they don't know, right? It's not like a single government where they're like, oh, we haven't heard from them in a while, you know? Like some of that, when you would understand that they have a lot of power, but they're much, much, much smaller than the Empire was. But that's what their advantage was, is they didn't make any of their moves until they took out the entire New Republic government. And that's when they were like, all right, now's the time to go and make ourselves known. I thought that was a huge missed opportunity, although I highly recommend reading the book Leia Bloodlines because it's incredible for the story. Anything Claudia Gray touches is gold. But back to Last Jedi and Shaylee, likes, dislikes, and different dues.
Let's see. Likes, I really like, as far as themes go, I feel like it was the strongest in conveying its themes. Like you already talked about hope. Another big theme was failure, and like Yoda says, like failure's the best teacher, and then we see like every single character learn something from their failure. And I think failure is something that you don't see a ton of in like movies like Star Wars. They tend to go, besides like Order 66, I don't think we see a lot of failure for the most part. So I really love themes of failure. I love flaws. And I love what it added to the Force, like how it, instead of like, oh, there's good and bad, it's more like there's light and dark and both are necessary. And Luke teaches her that. And like, I love the Force dyad. I love that addition. I think it's so sick. I think it's very cool. I love new characters. I love Rose. I think Rose, I love seeing, like I said with Rey, I love seeing characters that are driven by compassion, and that's very much Rose. And I said this in a video once, but like Rose is kind of a like representation of what separates the Resistance from the First Order. And like a lot of people don't like that she saved Finn, and that was a very like moment. But if you like when you think about things like that, that's exactly what Rose's character would do though. Like even if you don't agree with her decision, she's a person who is like fueled by love for people. So I love her character. What I didn't like, Canto bite scene was a little long. I just feel like there's some things that could have been condensed. But honestly, as far as how to do it differently, don't ask me. I honestly don't know how I would have fixed it. I would have liked more Finn and Rey moments because, again, I love their chemistry so much, and I felt like in the next two movies it was kind of just abandoned. And I was like, such a good dynamic. Give me more of it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I love The Last Jedi a lot, so I don't have many complaints.
Nice. And then, and Ryan?
All right, this is probably my least favorite Star Wars movie, so I'm going to have a lot more negative things to say about it than positive things.
Hey, hit us.
So good things about it. I liked the trailer. I guess I was super excited when Luke said it's time for the Jedi to end. I thought it was going to mean something entirely different. I thought it was going to be like the Jedi is a dumb way of looking at things. Let's stop with this whole dark side, light side thing. And they kept hinting towards that. Like Kylo Ren is like, join me, let's tear everything down, and all these different things. And I think that's the biggest problem with the sequels is they say, okay, we're going to push this forward, and then they just don't do anything with it. Finn is a stormtrooper. Let's just forget that he's a stormtrooper. How would a stormtrooper react to things? Stuff like that. And I don't know. I feel like that's probably the biggest problem with the sequels is they hint towards these things, and then they just don't deliver. And so probably my biggest gripe with The Last Jedi, I know a lot of people have covered this, but this is more of a problem with the sequels overall, is technology. The technology in the sequels is just so lazily done. I think that it is, you guys have said already you don't like Starkiller Base. I think it's a little over the top. It doesn't make much sense. And then the fact that the planets are that close together, like JJ did that in Star Trek, and now he did it in Star Wars, where the planets are just like super close to each other, and it doesn't make much sense. But the half-cylinder X-Wings, I despise that design. It makes very little sense why you'd have your engines be half cylinders, especially if your X-Wings are going to be used in the atmosphere or something like that. Why would you have them be half cylinders unless the X-Wings aren't going to be in their X formation when they're in the atmosphere? The bombers, I don't know why a resistance group would be using slow-moving bombers that are easy to take down like that. I get that they pack a payload, and I mean, they took out a dreadnought. But at the end of the day, if you have 10 of those things and you're a resistance group that is shown to only have a few thousand members at most, you aren't going to pack 5 or 6 of your people into one bomber and, you know, have these giant payloads, because that isn't going to be manpower efficient for a resistance. And I just think that there's a lot of things with technology in general. The Holdo maneuver, I know you've said it was a 1 in a million shot, but if it was a 1 in a million shot, like, why is that like a sacrifice or anything? Because it was a 1 in a million shot. Like, Holdo didn't know if it was going to succeed or not. Like, it's either you look at it one way where it could be used anywhere, or another way where, oh yeah, it was such a lucky shot that she got. And I think if it's such a lucky shot that she got, it doesn't really make much sense, because 1 out of a million, 999,000 out of a million times, she is going to miss that and just light speed somewhere else. And it just, I don't know, I just don't like the idea of all the ships just exploding at once. I think it's a pretty weird gimmick, at least. The Last Jedi is all over the place plot-wise. I was expecting Luke to end the Jedi, and when I learned that he just said, I want the Jedi to end because he had given up, that kind of, I don't know. And that whole scene with Rey and Luke there, it didn't really mean anything. There was nothing the characters learned while they were there, other than Leia learned that Luke didn't care. Like, Rey learned that Luke didn't care. She didn't really learn anything while she was there. She just went there and then went back to the ship, and nothing really changed. The same thing with the Canto bite scene. it was kind of like they went to Canto Bight to do this whole thing. They brought in a cool new character who I thought would be pretty cool, and then I'm guessing he's dead now. The guy with the stutter, like they just brought him in, and then he was gone. And it's just stuff like that. They introduce all these things, and then they just don't use them. And then I think my biggest gripe is probably going to be the Battle of Crate. It's set up to be this big battle. You don't see much fighting happen. They fly the little hinky-dinky ships at the AT-AT knockoffs, and then like nothing really happens with that. They like line up in the trenches. You don't see any of like the First Order stormtroopers storming the trenches or anything like that, which could have been a cool action scene. They just like disappear. All those resistance soldiers in the trenches, what happened to them? You're never gonna know. I never read the novel, so if they explain that in the novel, I don't know. And then like Finn's about to sacrifice himself to take out the big Death Star laser, and Rose stops him, and I don't have a problem with that. Like that's, as Shilly said, that's part of her character. That's probably what she would have done, keep him from sacrificing himself. But then she says like, we're not gonna win this by destroying, it's about saving what we love or something like that. And then the Death Star laser just fires at the door, and you have to assume that a bunch of people like die in that moment, and it just doesn't make much sense. And at the end of the day, they're all celebrating, and there's like 10 of them left half of like a resistance that was a few thousand earlier in the movie. And it's kind of like, okay, like there's like 10 of you against the First Order now. And I don't know, it just felt really strange. It felt like two gangs going at each other just because the numbers weren't there or something like that. And overall, I just had a really poor experience watching that movie. I just didn't like it that much.
Okay, that's definitely interesting. Yeah, I mean, for me, as you guys probably know, it's actually my second favorite Star Wars movie, and so as far as the things that I liked is, for one, is I really loved Luke's character in this, and I fully agree with everyone that says I don't like that Luke left and that he kind of bailed on everyone. I don't. I really don't. I really don't like that at all. I've done a bunch of research into finding out, what was George Lucas's original plan, and even back then, they talk about what they called the Luke problem, and that's as soon as this guy is on the screen, I don't care about anyone else. I want to see what he's doing. Like let's follow Luke. And so while I am not a fan of him having left for so long, well, actually, to be fair, we actually don't know exactly how long he left for. Actually,
It's around 8 years, I think.
Yeah, it was like 6 or 7 years, right? Because Kylo Ren's 23 at that at the moment. But I understand why it was needed, right? Because you have to. The story's not about him. So how are you going to make him in the story continue his arc without making him the main character? I think that was really important. I think they did a great job of it. And the reason my top three are Empire, Last Jedi, and Return of the Jedi is I'm a huge Luke fan. And seeing how they played with his character, especially with all of his moments while training with Yoda, those insights and things kept playing throughout the entire film. Even his last words was, "When I'm gone, I won't be the last Jedi." Yoda's last words to him were, "When I'm gone, the last Jedi you will be." And playing around with that theme of failure, because it's the same emotional guy that dives in feet first, and he continued with what the Jedi did. He wanted to emulate them and be just like his father. And he did, and he ran smack dab into the same problem that the Jedi ran into. And was like, maybe the problem's inherent in the system. And when he's talking to Rey and explaining to her, because his explanation of the Force is different than what we've heard before, because he talks about warmth and cold and life and death, and that the Force is what connects all of it. It really seems like he has a full a completed understanding of it, and how you don't have to be a Jedi to do good. Um, so yeah, I really like that. Um, and then I loved the development of Rey and Kylo's character, of their relationship, right? Because that's a really odd. How are you going to connect these two, these two characters who are on opposite sides and across the galaxy? And bringing the Force dyad from legends of what the Sith were always trying to recreate, by with the rule of two, bringing that into canon was just a really cool way to do that. Um, and like the music and sound design behind those scenes were awesome. Like the sound gets sucked out of the room and all that stuff.
Oh
Also,
yeah, that was cool.
when Luke comes in and they're like holding hands, and he's like, "The hell!" Like, what? That
So
just
good.
seems. It just makes me laugh, because it's like you walk in and your daughter has a boy in her room, and you're like, are you kidding?" And when the thing blows up, that was all practical. The one shot, they really blew up the roof of that dome and stuff. That I thought that was really cool. Um, and there was a bunch of things like that. Obviously, nobody really likes Canto Bite. That could have been condensed a lot. Um, it did add to Finn's character, right? Because he left the stormtrooper, but he had never experienced anything outside of being a stormtrooper, and that's what he wanted, right? He went to the bar in Takodana and was like, "This is awesome." So he chose to leave the stormtroopers, but he didn't choose to be part of anything else, and he was unconscious when he was brought to the resistance. So it was cool that they made him make that choice, but that whole thing could have been condensed quite a bit, in my opinion. And yeah, there's quite a few things that I didn't like, and I think that C plot is a weak part in the story, and that's why it'll never become my number one movie, because of how weak the Camper Bite plot was. Um, I also really enjoyed. I mean, I actually really liked the whole maneuver. I thought the whole storytelling behind, like, these ships are just accelerating full speed, and you're just trying to out accelerate the next one. It was a really unique plot. It's something we hadn't seen in Star Wars before, and it played around with some of the themes that we saw in the original trilogy behind fuel and the dangers of hyperspace and all that stuff. Um, I personally, I would have shot I would have shot Poe out of an airlock if he disobeyed orders and got like dozens of people killed. Uh, um, Also, they could have shot the whole Mary Poppins scene a lot better. It looked like she was flying rather than pulling herself in with the Force. I know that's a small difference, but to me, it makes a big difference.
Visually, yeah, it was
Yeah, it looked a little weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I would have kept the third lesson in. It's in the deleted scenes. It's in a novelization.
Is that the one where
but
she
the third
runs
lesson,
out into like the party?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, let's go ahead and move forward and hit Rise of Skywalker. I know that Shaylee loves this. This one is actually my least favorite Star Wars movie.
I really understand why it would be though.
But yeah, Shaylee, Rise of Skywalker, likes, dislikes, and what would you have done differently?
I think Rey and Ben, their dynamic was awesome in The Last Jedi, but I think again they stole the show in The Rise of Skywalker. I love the battles and the fights through the Force dyad, where like he realizes where she is because she knocks over something in his room. I thought that was so sick. I loved that. So I think that their relationship, their interactions really stole the show. And not just like, I'm not talking about Reylo, I just mean like them as like characters. Mm-hmm. I really loved seeing Leia get to become a Jedi, almost, and then just knowing that she got trained was meant a lot to me because I've been waiting for that. And also, I think Leia's send-off was really beautiful. I thought that could not have been better. I thought it was very beautiful. I loved, oh my gosh, the moment with Ben and Han. Tears. So many tears.
Yeah, that was good.
Oh, what else? I really loved Rey taking the Skywalker name, because I think it's a very natural path from overcoming your trauma to like making that decision. I don't know how to explain it super well, but I think it was like the obvious choice for her, was to decide her own fate, her own like who she wanted to be, and I think carrying on that legacy is really beautiful. And yeah, as far as stuff I didn't like, I don't like the unnatural introduction of Palpatine, and the lack of explanation. So, like, whenever I think of the prequels, I think of over explaining, and when I think of the sequels, I think of under explaining. And, like, the Palpatine thing didn't bother me, but I wish it had been hinted at more strongly sooner and set up better and then explained better. Because, like, it's actually pretty cool, but, like, most people didn't get it from the movies, like, how he came back. And, like, if I hadn't read into it more, I don't know if I would have gotten it either. I don't mind Palpatine coming back, but it was not explained very well, I don't think. As far as what I would have done differently, these are kind of minor things. I couldn't think of anything like huge I would have done differently. The last battle, I would have had Force ghosts behind Rey, not just the voices. I think it could have been a very visually powerful scene somehow. But it was still very powerful. I love that scene, but like, oh, and I also wish for at least one interaction between Ben and Anakin. I think that would have been very emotional, because like his whole thing was like, gotta be like Vader, like I gotta live up to Vader. And then like if he had actually got to like talk to Anakin, and that had been one of the things that pulled him out of it, oh man, I would have been a mess. I was already a mess with the Han moment, but I would have also loved an Anakin Ben moment. Yeah, but I like this movie for me. I just want to say I completely understand why people don't like this movie. I really get it. So there's just so many moments that were so strong for me that like when I think about it, I'm like, I just love it. There's a lot that I didn't like. Like I don't love the Babu Frick plot line. I don't love how the knife. I don't have a huge problem with it, but I was just kind of like, okay, that's random. And then I don't like how they were so mean to C-3PO. Like,
oh, I know.
They didn't even care about him.
He's precious.
He was like gonna give his life, and they were just like, do it, pull the plug.
What was really funny to me was he was like, I'm glad I'm gonna, like, the last thing I'm gonna see is my friends. And it's like, here's these three people who don't care about you. Like, if he had said that to like Han Solo or Luke Skywalker or like Leia, it would have made sense. Or if he had said it like in front of like R2-D2, but none of them were there. He was just looking at like these three people who he had interacted with like a couple times on camera.
Every time he spoke, they were so mean.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's it.
But yeah, Ryan, keep going.
All right, so I'm going to say it right now. I did not like the comedic approach the sequels took to Star Wars. The only things I can really see before that were really comedic were, I mean, in the originals, the whole comedy part was that everyone took everything so seriously. Like, that's what's funny. Like, the Leia and Han together in the Millennium Falcon and Empire Strikes Back is funny because they're taking everything so seriously, and there aren't really many jokes. The only things that are really like jokes in Star Wars before this were two things, and I think it was the Jar Jar Binks was obviously there for giggles, and then Obi-Wan and Anakin's banter in Revenge of the Sith, which I think was actually well done. And you can tell that their banter is because they're friends. They've known each other for a long time and stuff like that. And it's kind of like a contrast between like the good that happened before Anakin turned to the dark side and then like the fighting they're doing later when they're obviously at each other's throats. But yeah, take out not all of it. Like there could be some humor, but I think that a lot of the humor in the sequels is just like gags. Like when Luke throws away the lightsaber, that's not like, I feel like that doesn't mean anything. That was there to be like a laugh. That was there to be like a joke. And there's like a lot of moments that are just there to be jokes in the sequels. And I think they kind of take away from emotional moments. Like, am I supposed to be laughing or am I supposed to be like, you know, like afraid or like sad or something like that? But I think, yeah, Palpatine, I wasn't quite sold. As soon as I heard his voice, I was like, oh crap, they're bringing Palpatine back in the trailer. And I was like, okay. And but I'm gonna say my biggest problem with The Rise of Skywalker was definitely the giant, like as many ships as possible going at each other. Like it didn't really make much sense that there was just a bazillion First Order ships and then a bazillion everyone else ships that just show up at the end. Everyone wants to recreate Pelennor Fields. I know everyone wants to recreate, the end game scene where everybody just lines up and fights each other. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't be doing that all the time. There are times to do that, and there are times not to. And in Star Wars, the only times we've gotten a fight on that scale where there's that many ships is Coruscant. And in the Battle of Coruscant, we weren't focused on the fighting. We were focused on Anakin and Obi-Wan zipping around in their starfighters, showing off, their chemistry and their kind of abilities, and how like Anakin wants to like save the clone troopers, but he has to focus on the mission. And like the Battle of Coruscant isn't like what you're supposed to be paying attention to. And I feel like the big fights in Star Wars, I've always gotten so much more from like the dog fights in Star Wars, like when Slave One is chasing Obi-Wan, like the sound effects, everything in that fight is just perfect. And the large fights in Star Wars,
charges. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I could listen to that on repeat.
Yeah, those are just
My heart's
like
fluttering thinking about it.
yeah. And I feel like that's where Star Wars has always succeeded in those dogfight moments. A New Hope has those dogfight moments. When the music is going on, Dark Choco said this earlier today when he was streaming on TikTok. The music when Han Solo is flying through the asteroids and the TIE fighters are chasing them. Like that's such a more powerful moment than what you get in The Last Jedi, where they're just zipping through planets at hyperspace levels. And it's not, and the same sense of danger is there in both movies, but Empire Strikes Back is just a so much simpler tone. They're flying through an asteroid field, and yet there's so much like better mechanics. And then The Rise of Skywalker, probably my least favorite music selection. The other Ryan mentioned earlier that he would have liked more original soundtracks. I'm actually going to disagree with that. I think the prequels succeeded in their music choices because the prequels used a lot of original music. There is very little OT music in the prequels, except as like part of other tracks. So like Battle of the Heroes has the Force theme show up a bit, but it's not the main track going on. And Rise of Skywalker plays like a greatest hits anthem, and they just play it all in like the wrong moments. And I feel like the movie was just with the MacGuffin, and like Shirley was saying earlier, like they hold the knife up and it just matches the Death Star for some reason. A knife that I'm assuming was made thousands of years before, and somehow it just matches the Death Star wreckage. I don't know. And yeah, The Rise of Skywalker didn't really do it for me. I did like the fight though, when they were like fighting, Kylo Ren and Rey were fighting through the Force diode. That was really cool. I liked how that was done. But then like the whole Palpatine scene, Rey's about to kill him, and then he's like, oh, if you kill me, you'll turn to the dark side. And then it's like Palpatine like told her that. Like I feel like they could have done it earlier, like Leia could have told, or Luke could have told Rey, be careful not to give in to anger and stuff like that. And then later she recalls that and then doesn't kill Palpatine because of that. But instead, like Palpatine tells her, strike me down and you will become the next Sith. And so Rey decides not to strike him down. And so it's kind of like Palpatine, the master manipulator, kind of unmanipulates Rey into killing him when 2 seconds before she probably would have if he hadn't have said that. So I don't know. But that's just my overall opinion on The Rise of Skywalker. I think a lot of its failures came from The Last Jedi kind of wrapping things up. Like after I saw The Last Jedi, I did not know where they were going to take the next film. I think that it was, if I was a director and I had to direct the next movie, I would have had no idea where to take the next film. That's just how I see it. The Last Jedi just wrapped a lot of things up. They killed off Snoke. They did all these things. And it was kind of like, where do you take the movies from here? And so I don't actually blame. That's why it's not my least favorite Star Wars movie, even though I probably dislike it the most, because it's just where they going to take it. Like, I think they were kind of like doomed to fail, at least in my opinion. But I'll leave it to the next Ryan to give his thoughts.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. And then also to your point, for both the, I don't think it wasn't this way for episode 4, but for all the rest of the original trilogy as well as the prequels, George Lucas brought in like had the music designed along with the movie as it was being filmed. They weren't scoring a movie at the end. They were designing them together and interweaving them, and that was super powerful. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love both Kylo Ren's theme and Rey's theme. I think Rey's theme is actually
Oh yeah, I
becoming
like
one
Ray's
of my
theme for
so
sure.
good.
Ray's theme is probably the best one, and then the March of the
Definitely.
Resistance are probably the two, in my opinion, the two best soundtracks.
Yeah.
Like when they played Ray's theme, the times they play Ray's theme in The Force Awakens, as I said earlier, the music in The Force Awakens was really on point, and they used Ray's theme. And the time where like you hear the March of the Resistance start playing, and all the X-wings just start flying along the water, like that's just a really good use of music and cinematography. But
Oh yeah,
Skywalker just doesn't have it.
love that scene. But yeah, Ryan, yeah, go ahead with your thoughts on it.
Yeah, actually, when I was saying with the music, when I said original music is what we need more of, I meant to also include prequel music. For example, I don't know if you guys know the names of the songs, but we have like Darker Deeds, Anakin's Betrayal, which is the Order 66 theme. I think those like super sad themes, or The Birth of the Two Twins, that's another good one, include some of that music in the sequels, and it could literally change the emotional meaning. For example, I think using the Order 66 theme when Kylo kills Han, because when that's pretty much one of his biggest sacrifices, or really the biggest test to his dark side is when he kills Han, and that's also Anakin's biggest test to his dark side when he, you know, kills Mace Windu, and then Order 66 goes through. Um, I think that could pull me more into the sequels, liking it a lot more if just having more prequel music. Maybe I'm just more like a really musically driven person when it comes to the Star Wars movies, but yeah. Uh, for Rise of Skywalker, though, what I liked, I would say, I like that Rey is really showing that she's a Skywalker in this movie. She's finding more creative ways to win in situations where it's you got a bunch of stormtroopers on you. She's finding really creative ways. One example is when she tells BB to explode that yellow canister in the very beginning. It's just like creative ways to just get wins, and I think that's really how Anakin did it. I think all the droids were great. We got to see a little bit more droids in here, and I really like Babu Frick, actually. I thought Babu Frick was so funny. And I think Finn and Poe really strengthened their relationship here. But Rose, like, what happened to Rose? I actually liked her. A lot of people don't. I know almost all of my friends. I don't think I can name a single person I'm friends with that likes Rose, which I don't get why, but I like Rose a lot. And they barely used her in this movie. I think she had like 5 lines. And what else? Oh, the Knights of Ren. I think they were overhyped and underused, kind of like how Phasma was in FA. But I think the Knights of Ren were so cool. We could totally see more stuff with them. We didn't get to, unfortunately. But that's really the 2 major things. And of course, lightsaber fights, which I've kind of been nitpicking throughout the analysis of the other couple movies. And then done differently, um, I would still say music, and that's. Oh, also, I made a video about like the whole Rey Skywalker name thing. I was mainly kidding there, but in reality, I'm totally cool with the whole Rey Skywalker name. That's how it is in the movies. But I think it would have been really cool to see her embrace the Palpatine name, the name that's been looked at by the entire galaxy as this menacing and just destructive name. And then now all of a sudden, it's one of the greatest people in the universe now is using this name. I think it would be a really cool twist to have Rey go by Palpatine. But that's really all I'd have to say about Rise of Skywalker.
All right. And then also, sorry, there's something else I forgot about in The Last Jedi that I absolutely hated. Oh my God, I hated it so much. But when BB-8 started controlling the walker,
Oh yeah,
I was
West
like,
Wind.
what? And I would have hated it more had Finn not had the same expression on his face that I had on my face of like, the hell? Like,
They made a Lego set based on that, and I can tell you it is probably one of the worst received Lego sets of all time. I'm really big into Star Wars Lego. Lego Star Wars got me into Star Wars a lot. Like I'd buy Lego sets and I'd want to see where they were in the movies when I was a little kid and stuff like that. And for me especially, like they released that Lego set and I was just like, why? Why release that Lego set?
yeah. Also in the beginning of The Last Jedi, when BB-8 was plugging electric leaks or whatever and
Yeah.
just smash his head,
Yeah.
that also confused the hell out of me of like, I don't understand what he's doing here. But anyways, I just thought about those. So Rise of Skywalker is my least favorite of the Star Wars films, and in fact Rogue One was my least favorite until I rewatched it because I just did an episode on Rogue One and talking with all those people that loved it, and then rewatching it, it raised it. I know you love it, Shaylee. But what did I like about it? I
You
thought.
could think about it.
Sorry. I don't mean it like that.
That's
That's one of the tone things again. So one of the things I did love is how the interplay with the dyad worked, right? When they are, they are forcibly meeting together and they're still like, God, this is still happening. And Kylo Ren like walks up and then snatches the necklace and then is able to use that. It's a cool continuation of what we saw from The Last Jedi. So I did really like that. I also again, it's a very beautifully shot movie. And I agree with Victoria Vaders is in the chat and was talking about the similarities between Leia's death, how it was in love, and with her child, it being similar to Padme's death, while at the same time bringing her closer to her father. Of course, part of this comes from being a nerd and reading all the books because, she never got that catharsis. Like Luke saw Vader turn to the light. Leia didn't see that. She saw a monster that tortured her and then blew up her planet. She never, they had to just take Luke's word for that. But that kind of gets into some of the things I disliked is it was, so this movie felt like, and we actually know that they changed directions for this movie. And I know that, I feel like this was because of the reaction to The Last Jedi. I know a lot of people were screaming, raise the Mary Sue and like, why is she so powerful? Which is also odd to me because she's the weakest of the protagonists. And, but I feel like, her being related to Palpatine was tossed in after the fact. And we actually know that that's true. And I also think that JJ again plays off of nostalgia more than he does. Like fan service can be great. It can be great as long as it makes sense in the universe. And I feel like there's a lot of stuff in this movie that were we not the audience, like that we as the audience understand, and the people in the film have no idea what's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when they're like, somehow Palpatine has returned, and then the one guy's, everyone's like, oh no, oh my god, and then like, secrets only the Sith knew, dark magic, cloning, or whatever. Who knew that Palpatine was a Sith Lord? Who knew that? Nope, no one in the Empire knew that, right? So I don't know, that part seems super weird to me because you're like, you know what I mean? That's something we know. How do you know it?
Also, like the cloning, a secret only the Sith knew, and then it's like the Kaminoans have been doing it for years and stuff like that. There's an entire war. There's entire. Did you guys miss? 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and there was this giant galactic war called the Clone Wars. Yeah.
But at the same time, there is something to be said of, 40, 50 years ago to us, that's Nazi Germany, right? There's a lot of stuff we don't know
It
about
was
the
more like
rise
Vietnam,
of that.
but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but it's more applicable to how that's more what they were modeled after.
Yeah,
Although the rebels were modeled after the Viet Cong, but anyways, there's a lot of weird stuff that was for the fans that I don't understand how the people in the film knew. Also, the beginning felt rushed. Now, I don't blame that on The Last Jedi, because especially after we saw that Colin Trevorrow had a different script, and as well as what it felt like they were setting up is for Kylo Ren to embrace his role as a supreme leader and become the big bad. You know what I mean? Like, I think of Anakin at the end of episode 3, where he's talking to Padme and he's like, yeah, I can overthrow the Emperor. I'm more powerful than he is. And then we can just run things ourselves, and that was the same offer that he made to Rey in The Last Jedi. And whereas Rey, she followed Luke's journey all the way up to Luke and Vader in the elevator going up to see the Emperor, of being like, no, I'm going to resist this. So I was hoping the last movie was going to be a stand-in for Revenge of the Sith Anakin versus a stand-in for Return of the Jedi Luke. And I thought that would be incredible. But the beginning felt rushed to me, not because they didn't have a place to go, but because they just tried to do too much. You had to go here to get the message, to bring it back, to go here to find the knife, to go here to read the inscription, to go here to find the Death Star, then you go into the Death Star to find the Wayfinder. You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of MacGuffin.
It's like a weird scavenger hunt, like Goonies kind of movie.
Yeah, and which is okay, but I do think that part could have been done better. One thing I did love is, so we got to see Kylo Ren fighting with this unstable blade, and he fully mimicked his blade and how he fought, and especially while he's fighting Luke, and you can see how wild and emotional, he's relying on his emotions for power, not his skills, not his mind, his emotions, which is the trap of the Sith. I loved that as soon as he got, Anakin's blade, his fighting style was way different when he fought the Knights of Ren. He fought very smoothly, very fluidly, like he was using his skills. So I thought that was really cool, because it shows that is definitely part of him, that's in his wheelhouse, and he was choosing not to do it. I got major feels when Harrison Ford came back. I still maintain, I wish that was Anakin telling him, don't follow my path. My path led to nothing.
Seeing Hayden Christensen on screen again, oh my God, I don't know what I would do.
I mean, you might get that with the Obi-Wan show.
Yeah, I heard that he's playing a big part, but that's a rumor.
Yeah.
It better be true. And to answer your question, I would defecate. Anyway, but yeah, overall, like there's a lot of changes I would make. They ran out of things to do with Finn. He just ran around yelling Rey a lot.
That was one of my biggest complaints too. I forgot.
Yeah, his Force sensitivity, which was hinted throughout all of the movies. There's always bits where you can tell there was something there, but in this movie, it was solely used for him to know what's going on with Rey when she's not next to him.
His potential.
Yeah, and then additionally, at the end, they tried to make it a big three. Just like Han, Luke, and Leia. But they weren't a big three. Like, Poe wasn't part of that. Like, Finn was the link between Poe and her. And so it felt weird at the end when they're all like hugging and jumping.
It's a lot different than the OT, because in the OT we see them in the first one, kind of all three of them kind of working together to escape, working together to escape the Death Star, and then they fight the TIE fighters together, and then they blow up the Death Star together. You never really got that in, the Force Awakens or Last Jedi.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I would change. Again, I feel like the problem of this movie is the same thing that happened to Justice League. Of there was fan backlash after the previous films. People didn't like Batman vs Superman, which when they added those deleted scenes, it actually made sense. But you would have gotten a better movie altogether had they continued on target rather than try to pivot partway through. And that's kind of how I feel. As far as her becoming Rey Skywalker in the theater, I hated it. And then I started talking to some people, and it gave me a complete 180 because I realized all the Skywalkers are dead. So this name is going to go into obscurity forever. Or she can carry it on. And then also knowing people who have had to, it's common these days that people have like Friendsgiving and stuff like that because they don't have a traditional family. And they find their family and their friends, or people from the LGBTQ community who are disowned by their family, having to find a new one. And when I saw how much it meant to those people, then all of a sudden it clicked. And I was like, okay, no, I gotcha. Yeah, those are just kind of my thoughts on it. And since all of us are taking turns and going in different orders, I'm curious if you guys have. I want to do final thoughts for the entire trilogy of movies. I know it's not on the thing, but from what you guys are thinking and from what you've heard from other people, I'm curious if anything else jumps out at you for either likes, dislikes, or things that you would do differently. To be honest, I have no idea who I started with, so I'm starting with Ryan Presley.
I think especially after I rewatched it, I definitely liked it a lot more than when I just saw the movie separately and maybe rewatched them here and there. But I think rewatch it, people out there, if you just rewatch it, you might enjoy it a lot more. But also, the biggest thing for me would have to be the music and the combat, and maybe just giving characters more of a chance. We get to see a lot of characters that just we don't get to see after like a certain point. They kind of get cut off. That's really my, I guess, closing statement for the sequels.
Yeah. Also, quick question for you. Where would you put Across the Stars if you were going to put it somewhere in the sequels?
Oh,
that song gives me chills, and I love it. Also, I don't know if you guys are into I don't know if it's metal or not, but have you listened to Galactic Empire? They're like a piecemeal metal band, and they only cover Star Wars songs, and it's
I have not, but I bet that sounds
awesome.
cool.
And their cover of Across the Stars just blows my mind. They also do my favorite, the Asteroid theme. But yeah, real quick, Ryan, Across the Stars.
Yeah, I would say Across the Stars. I would put that when Ben and Ray kiss. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say put it there. That would people that already don't like that. Yeah, people already don't like that. That would just the people that do like it, they'll love it. The people that hate that already existing connection, they would hate it. But I can't see any other place it would go. I mean, that's like a real intimate song for like two people, I think, that love each other. So probably there, but it would be kind of weird. It would definitely be weird.
And it would tie that together. That's also one of my dislikes is that Ben has no dialogue as Ben at all. That was a weird choice. But that's okay. He says "ouch," but that's it.
He says "ouch."
Shaylee, now we're looking at start to finish, full collection.
Whenever I look at each trilogy, I have a lot of things I love and a lot of things I hate. Overall, this one I have the most loves, but there's also a ton of potential that was missed, Finn.
Yeah.
And then it's still my favorite trilogy. It could have been one of the greatest things ever, though. But yeah, there's so much to love. There's so much to love. But I don't know. I don't have any really new thoughts. But I was rewatching. I will say this. I rewatched The Force Awakens today because it's been a little while, and I enjoy that movie so much more than I remembered. So much to the extent because I haven't watched it like a year or something. I might move it up my list. Like I had so much fun watching that today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, my closing thoughts are I just really love the sequels. There was a lot of missed potential, but I think Disney, that was kind of, this sequel trilogy was like dipping their toes in the water. I think next time when they can branch away from Skywalker saga and they can start fresh, I think it'll be something really awesome.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And then, I mean, you saying that also reminds me of something that, our good friend, Victoria Vader said earlier, because, she teaches dance, and she was telling us about how there's a bunch of little girls in her dance studio having a full-on Star Wars debate with each other. Well, and it's just unheard of for 6, 7-year-old girls to have a debate about Star Wars. So I do love that it expanded. It reached these other people. That makes me happy. But yeah, Ryan, start to finish.
I probably dislike the sequels more than anyone else here, just given by the discussions. They're definitely my least favorite Star Wars movies by far, which is sad because I loved Rogue One, I loved Solo, and I really liked The Mandalorian. But yeah, I just did not like what they did. The post-Imperial era, before the sequels, was my favorite era of Star Wars. You had so many good book series. You had Rogue Squadron. You had the Thrawn books. You had the Jedi Hunt books, or the one where Luke's starting the Jedi Order, and Exar Kun returns. You had the Legacy novels. You had all these things, and they kind of just threw those out the window. And to me, someone who had read all those books really enjoyed those stories. And then I went into The Force Awakens. And I actually kind of enjoyed The Force Awakens. When I first saw it, something seemed off to me. It didn't really develop. I didn't really start to think about it negatively until I read the Aftermath books. I really disliked those books, coming from Timothy Zahn and other writers. And just the battle scenes that they really did, and the amount of care they put into their lore and their campaigns and their Imperial remnants and stuff like that. And then going to Aftermath, which cares nothing for the military side of things and stuff like that. It's a really big jump, at least in my opinion, from those two books. And I don't know, I just really dislike the Aftermath. And for the sequels, I was never going to like them because the things I wanted to see, which were like the Jedi Order, how it was going to be like reborn or something like that, or how the New Republic is like doing and stuff like that, I would have liked a lot more lore. And personally, I'm really into role playing. So I GM a lot of Star Wars role play with my friends and myself. And that's kind of a big part in my life, is a lot of Star Wars role-playing games. And for me, the lore of Star Wars movies, what goes on behind the scenes in the Star Wars movies, is the most interesting part to me. I like the prequels because the Clone Wars is going on. I like the OT because the whole Empire versus the Rebels conflict, the Mid-Rim Offensive, is such an interesting scene in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and Legends. And all of that outside lore was really what I loved about Star Wars. And so really, like, the new movies and the new books, save for a few, I liked Lost Stars. I thought Lost Stars was really good at what it was. And I think the lore behind Lost Stars was incredible. I really liked that. And but overall, it feels like two gangs fighting each other. It's a couple ships fighting each other. At the end of The Rise of Skywalker, the First Order isn't dead. The First Order, like, they didn't do anything to the First Order. The First Order still exists. They defeated Palpatine's ships, his Zyston Star Destroyers, but all of that First Order strength that we saw at the end of The Last Jedi, that's still there. They never defeated that. So it's kind of like you set up these people to be the main villains of your series, and then they're not even defeated at the end of your series. You know, they're still out there. They never suffered a crushing defeat other than in the first movie. And it's like, okay, so why didn't you do anything with the First Order? Why didn't you include the First Order in the big fight at the end? But it's kind of like, I don't know. And I feel like overall, it would have benefited more if you had the same director for all three films. I think that if it was one person's vision over two people's visions, and I really do think, I disagree with you on that, that they didn't have a very clear plan set out. They might have had guidelines. They might have said, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But they didn't really have a clear storyboard set out for all three movies. And you can tell that Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams are cutting jokes at each other while they're making their films. Snoke has a line to Kylo Ren where he's like, you lost to a girl who had never even held a lightsaber, which I feel like is kind of like a slight jab at J.J. Abrams. And I feel like the two were kind of fighting each other. Like J.J. Abrams sets up that Rey is going to have some lineage. And in the books, you even get that Rey has some lineage. Then Rian Johnson says, okay, Rey doesn't have lineage. And then at the end of the day, she does have lineage. And it's kind of like, okay. And maybe if you get a lot of the behind the scenes things, you can say, okay, that makes sense. But I don't think they should have included those things in the movies if they were going to have that overall plan at the end. Like if Kylo Ren knew she was Palpatine's granddaughter in the beginning, that makes sense because he says that, like, everyone's in the books, because that's the only book I've read. They mentioned that Rey said
it
that,
is you.
yeah, oh, it is you. And it's like Rey is saying everyone seemed to know who she was except her. And then it's like people knew that she was somebody's person. And then Rian Johnson is like, oh yeah, you're nobody. Which to me, at least when I heard that, I was like, that can't be true because The Force Awakens literally set up in the book that Rey was somebody. And so, I don't know. It's just like, there was a lot of conflict that I could pick up in these three movies that they were kind of tugging at each other. Rian Johnson was tugging one way and J.J. Abrams was tugging the other way. And quite honestly, like, I just felt like it wasn't the more coherent story that we could have got if one person was directing all three.
I agree with that 100%. It felt to me like Force Awakens was like a shot straight down the middle, and then Last Jedi was like a turn to the right, and then instead of taking this and like going straight or going right or whatever, felt like this one was like here.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of what it felt to me. So I can definitely feel you on that. And I agree. What I would say is, for my overall thoughts, there's definitely a lot that they could do differently. Also, what you said about her being a Palpatine, and you know, as we know, that decision did come later. The thing that it always makes me chuckle is because in Last Jedi, he says that your parents sold you for drinking money, and then in the next one, they're like, they sold you to care for it, to take care of you, and you're like, you couldn't have dropped her off at some old lady's house or like a church or something. You actually sold her. You got money, and you left her with Unkar Plutt.
Win-win.
I mean, yeah, that is.
I mean, Kylo Ren could have always been lying to like get her worked up that they sold her for drinking money. That doesn't necessarily have to be true. Although in Star Wars, I have a feeling that when characters do say things, it is true. Because the whole Luke, I am your father, or not Luke, I am your father, no, I am your father scene. Most people, when they saw it, they didn't actually think it was true. At least talking like my dad and stuff like that. He's like, no, I thought Darth Vader was totally lying in that moment and stuff like that. And I feel like in Star Wars, when characters say stuff like that, they aren't lying just because of the precedent that Empire Strikes Back set up.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that as well. It feels like most people in Star Wars are saying what they believe to be true, and they've arranged this universe to where you understand that all these people have different perspectives. Just because this person believes it's true doesn't mean it's true. Obi-Wan fully thought that Luke was the chosen one. Why would he think Anakin was still the chosen one? Anakin murdered everyone and turned to the dark side, but Anakin was still the chosen one, you know? So yeah, I do think about that as well. But yeah, I mean, moving forward, I kind of want to come back now that we've gone through all the movies, because we get a lot of backlash whenever people talk about Rey as a character. Um, and then specifically when they mention Rey Skywalker. Now, I want those to kind of be two separate things, but I am curious to hear your guys' thoughts on why do people dislike Rey in general, and what is the big problem with Rey Skywalker? Why is that a thing? I don't understand why it's a thing. And I'll start with Shaylee.
I think a lot of Rey's. So there's like a difference between people who who just sort of like, yeah, Rey's whatever, like I don't like Rey, and people who vehemently like hate Rey and think she's the worst thing that happened to Star Wars. I think a lot of people like have this like great hatred for Rey just because I don't think they understand her. And I think there's a few reasons. I made a video about it recently. I think a lot of people don't understand her character and her character arc. And we just forget that just because you don't connect to a character personally doesn't make them a bad character. Because from beginning to end, I connected with Rey 1000%, like 1,000,000%. Really, she meant a lot to me. But people who don't understand her story say that she doesn't have a story or doesn't have an arc or it was terrible. But it's like, well, you just didn't connect to it, and that's fine. You do not have to like her. But I think the main reason for Rey's hate is just misunderstanding. I think it's our first time seeing a central protagonist in Star Wars that's female, and like I said before, we tend to put female leads in this box where it's like you have to kind of reject femininity a bit, be very stoic, and
if you're not a bitch, you're not strong.
Right. And like she didn't do that, and that's what people expect. And then when they give and when I ask them, I'm like, well, who do you like, what characters do you like? It's always across the board. It's always like people who did, like I said, it's always people who have rejected this femininity. And like even some people use even Ahsoka for an example, but when Ahsoka had a personality, like more of a personality, everybody hated her. Everybody hated her so much. And then what did she become? I love Ahsoka, favorite character ever, but what she in season 7 was very stoic, you know? And it's like once she got to that box they liked, then they were like, now they like Ahsoka. Does that make sense?
That's interesting. I've never even made that connection. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because I there's a lot of things I don't make those connections in myself, you know. And then also, so I do have the third question there. There's a lot of things where people who don't like Rey end up being called like a misogynist or something like that. Sometimes, I mean, oftentimes it's unfair. Sometimes it's not. I don't think we should throw around words like that, you know, willy-nilly. But I also want to hear your thoughts on that, Shaylee, and then we'll carry those through everyone.
As far as the misogynist thing, I think you just have to keep in mind, I run a Star Wars account. I love Rey. 99% of the time, I'll say 98% of the time, the reasons people give me for not liking her are really sexist. And I don't think that represents the majority of people that don't like her, but they're definitely the loudest. So like whenever I get that all the time, like all these sexist reasons, I get frustrated. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, y'all just hate Rey because she's a woman. And like, so if that comes across as that, I'm sorry. Just keep in mind that I hear it all the time. But I think also a lot of people give reasons they don't like Rey, but they don't realize that there's a bias there. So like the Mary Sue thing is blatantly biased because, like you said, she's actually the weakest of the protagonists, and she's there's like anytime she won or anything, there was like an external reason, like there's explanations for everything, but people throw that term Mary Sue, but we don't question, like if there's a plot device explaining a male character's power, we don't question it. Like Luke's the chosen one. That's why he's so powerful. We don't question that. We're like, oh, he's the chosen one. But then there's like reasons for Rey to be so powerful, but we're like, and it's just like, I don't think people realize that there's a bias there. And I don't think that people realize, like when I was talking earlier, that they have a bias for female characters. And I don't think that's anybody's fault. I think that's a result of a lack of representation of a variety of female personalities and leads and strong characters. And like one example that I always give that I think really nailed it, Game of Thrones, if you look at Sansa versus Arya, one of them uses her femininity in a very powerful way and she's equally as strong. And then like Arya, I'm getting their names right? I haven't watched it since season 8 because, oh my God.
Sansa's the older one who's a lot more mature. And then Arya's the younger one who's like super, loves fighting, stuff like that.
Yeah, so like,
rejects her femininity.
They did an excellent job of showing a variety of female strengths. Like you can be like Arya and reject femininity, and that is valid and that's awesome. But you can also be like Sansa. And like I feel like Game of Thrones did that really well, but you don't see that often. So I think that results in people misunderstanding Rey. They think she's like not realistic, or they think she's not like a real woman, but she's exactly like me. I'm a real woman. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't think it's anybody's fault for misunderstanding Rey's character. I think it is a result of a lack of representation, and I think it will get better. But so I just think the misogyny thing, I don't think people realize the reasons they're giving a lot of the times. Like there's plenty of reasons to criticize Rey that are not misogynistic, and I've heard like don't like her writing, don't relate to her story, but that's my spiel on that topic.
Okay, all right. I'm still thinking about the Stark girl being the worst Jean Grey I've ever seen. That's a whole separate topic. We're not going to get to that, but awesome. No, I love having that perspective because again, it's not something I relate to or really notice. You know what I mean?
And that's totally fine to not relate to Rey, but we just have to remember that doesn't make her bad.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people do.
Right.
And Ryan, your thoughts?
I do. I'm gonna say it. I do think Rey is Mary Sue, but not because she's too powerful. I actually think that the power part isn't what makes her Mary Sue. Anakin is your most powerful character in Star Wars. Yes. And I would say he is a Gary Stu in The Phantom Menace. He is a Gary Stu in The Phantom Menace. If I'm going to make the argument that Rey is a Mary Sue in the sequels, I will make the argument that Kid Anakin is a Gary Stu in The Phantom Menace. Do I hate Jake Lloyd because of that? No. I think he was bullied for wrong reasons, stuff like that. I think what happened to him was... But Anakin is really powerful and I mean, the one that you'd make the argument that he is the most powerful in is, of course, Revenge of the Sith. Attack of the Clones, he gets completely crushed by Count Dooku. He gets demolished by him. But the whole point of Anakin's character is he's this super powerful character. He is this arrogant, but he's arrogant because of that power. He is so powerful that he has become so arrogant because of it. His whole character arc revolves around him being super powerful. Being a Mary Sue, in my opinion, isn't because you're powerful. Rey is not a Mary Sue because she is powerful. She is a Mary Sue because her character lacks internal conflict, and that is what a Gary Stu is as well. Rey doesn't have moral conflictions. Luke almost killed Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi. He almost turned to the dark side, which actually kind of mirrors the way that Anakin almost turned to the dark side, except Anakin actually went through with it, whereas Luke didn't, and he stopped, threw away his lightsaber, like that. But at the end of the day, Rey against Anakin, I wouldn't call Luke a Mary Sue just because Luke never wins a lightsaber duel except against Darth Vader, but that was external reasons because Luke, Darth Vader got him totally off guard. Luke came out of the shadows and just attacked him in a fury of anger and stuff like that. I would say that Luke never won a lightsaber battle in his trilogy. At the end of the day, Rey does win, and that's not the problem. The problem is that Rey doesn't have conflict in her. And that's what I feel like is a big theme of Star Wars, is your main character has a ton of conflict in them. They're conflicted between, the dark side and the light side. And Rey does have conflict in her, but her conflict are like two good reasons. It's like, should I go do this to help this person, or should I go do this to help this person? The moment that it is revealed to her that what she is doing could be evil, she immediately snaps and says, I'm not going to do this. The moment it's revealed to her. If Leia had said to Rey in Rise of Skywalker, be careful of turning to the dark side, it can lead you to do terrible things, be careful of giving into your anger, I think it would have been so much more powerful. But Rey never has that confliction, you never, at least I never got conflict in Rey's character. And so I would say that I don't have a problem with her, overall power. Another thing which I do have a problem with is some of her abilities. I'm really into a kind of everyone has a strength mentality when you have a character. Like one character is a really good pilot. One character is really good at this. One character is this, And Rey can just do everything else that everyone else can do. Like there is no need. So you don't have a C-3PO character to talk between her and BB-8 because she can communicate with BB-8. I don't know how she can talk to BB-8. Like, are there other BB-8 droids around? But, you don't need a C-3PO character. Whereas Luke kind of needed C-3PO to communicate between him and R2-D2. And while Luke has the explanation for why he's such a great X-Wing pilot is because he was a stunt pilot. He flew his T-16 Starhopper or Skyhopper, whatever you call it, all the time. He was flying stunt fighters. An X-Wing is a stunt fighter, at least the original X-Wings. I don't know about the sequel X-Wings being stunt fighters because they seem a bit more high-tech than your OT X-Wing. But your OT X-Wing was a stunt fighter, so it makes sense that Luke is able to pilot it. Could Luke have piloted the Millennium Falcon? If Luke had been piloting the Millennium Falcon before Han Solo, taught him, I would have had problems with that, But at the end of the day, Rey's able to only flying speeders, which is a bit different. That's like going from like a motorcycle to like a plane in a matter of like a day. And I don't like the Millennium Falcon is a piece of trash that Han Solo has specifically modified for him. And at the end of the day, like, I don't know if like, that whole flying scene with her and Finn in the beginning of The Force Awakens, like, I don't know, like it just, I feel like that isn't something that she could have been able to do it, but to me at least, like that doesn't feel like something that, and I've always felt like each character should have a specific task. While Luke did blow up the Death Star, Han Solo was always the pilot, Luke was your Jedi. He was your Jedi character, and then Leia was kind of like your noble character in a D&D game and stuff like that. Like each has her part, but Rey can do everything that Poe can do. She can fly really well. She can do all these things that Poe can do. Why need Poe? Why do you need Poe in these missions? She can fight pretty well against stormtroopers. Like she's a Jedi. She can defeat your average stormtrooper. And she can defeat a bunch of them. And then, Finn, I feel like his purpose kind of got sidelined unfairly after The Force Awakens. But I just feel like that is what makes Rey a Mary Sue, is just she's able to excel over all these other characters. And she kind of steals the spotlight from them. And she doesn't really have that moral ambiguity. So the problem isn't necessarily her power level or her lack of training. It's more of that, she doesn't have the same conflict within her that other characters had. And I think that is my biggest problem with her character, is just that lack of pull between the light side and the dark side.
Okay, and I actually am curious about one thing real quick, if you don't mind. As we're watching the movies, we know Luke is a pilot because he tells us he's a pilot. Yeah. He's like, I'm not such a bad pilot myself. And then later he's like, I used to bullseye womp rats in my T-16 Skyhopper all the time. They're no bigger than 2 meters, right? So yeah, the only reason that we know that he can fly is because he's referred to it in dialogue. But I'm curious because Rey also refers to it in dialogue. And I'm curious what the difference is between those two.
Luke was flying a stunt fighter. That's what he refers to. The T-16 Skyhopper is a stunt fighter, which is very similar to an X-Wing.
It's also made by Incom, just the same, so it'll have the same control scheme.
So they're very similar ships. He has been doing this crap. At least to my understanding, I understand why Rey wouldn't leave the planet, but at least for me to understand Rey's character, she has never, like, I don't know, I feel like she's never flown a ship before. That's against her character. You know, she's always wanted to stay at home. She's always wanted to stay in her like home waiting for her family to come back. That's her character. She's been waiting for her family to come back. She's never really had the aspirations Luke's had. Luke, on the other hand, he's this character. He wants to go to the Naval Academy. He wants to become a pilot. So all his life he has been training to be a pilot, to get accepted into the Naval Academy. And you know, he really, that's like his whole goal around him, is the fact that, you know, he wants to be a pilot like his father was. Meanwhile, Rey has been, you know, it's very hard for me to imagine her flying a ship when her entire like mentality is, I want to stay home and I really want to wait for my family to arrive. And so her skills with the staff based around like the characters she's been around on this like junk world, backwater world makes sense. You know, she would have hand-to-hand combat abilities. And for me, at least, I like to look at everyone from a D&D character lens. You know, you craft a character and then put them in a situation. And for me, Rey's character is, I've been around these backwater worlds, so I have hand-to-hand abilities. So that's why I have hand-to-hand abilities. I have good mechanical skills because I've worked as a, you know, collecting junk my entire life and repairing it for stuff. But at the end of the day, I would say that the piloting skills, her ability to pilot the Millennium Falcon, which I would imagine is a really hard ship to really master because it's been modified so much. Like, at the end of the day, that isn't something that I would see her character able to do. And the fact that, you know, she's able to do it, I would say flawlessly. She defeats 2 TIE fighters pretty well. And, you know, it's just stuff like that that I think leans people towards the idea that she's, you know, a bit too good at what she does, as opposed to maybe taking a step back and saying, okay, here's my character, here's what they can do, here's what they're not so good at. And it's okay for characters not to be good at some things. Like, and I just feel like, I don't know, that's how I look at it.
Okay, no, that's definitely interesting. I mean, it is explained a little bit further in a book, but the book came out at the same time as Force Awakens, November 2015. It's before the Awakening. It's Finn, Poe, and Rey's their story that leads right into the movie. That was released alongside the movie. It does go a little bit into that, but I definitely see what you're saying, and a lot of times, you know, you can't expect people to always be interested in reading the book. But I do want to add that it is there, and we also have to remember she did almost crash it as soon as she took off. You know what I mean? Between everyone that we've seen fly it, which is her, obviously Lando, Chewbacca flew it, Han. She's actually been the worst pilot we've seen fly the ship. But yeah, and I'm curious of other Ryan, your thoughts on these.
Can I add something really quick? Just really small. She actually did say she's flown ships before in the movie.
No.
So it's like, she hasn't just flown speeders, she's flown like ships.
Right.
Yeah, she said, I've flown ships, but I've never left the planet. And part of that Before the Awakening story is, it's actually really sad because she repairs a ship, flies it. There's 2 people that she's like working with. And then she's like, they're going to go sell it to Unkar Plutt because, man, they're going to get so much food on this. And so she flies it over there, goes up to Unkar Plutt, and then the 2 other people she was just takes off and leaves. And she realizes that they've been hinting that they've wanted to leave the planet this whole time, and leaving the planet has never even crossed her mind because she's waiting. It's actually a really sad story of how they just like dip out on her. And then she's like, crap, they've been saying that they wanted to leave this whole time. And I left them in the ship, like with the keys running and stuff. It's a really sad story, actually. But yeah, Ryan, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think people dislike Rey because I think there's a lot of reasons. There's people that actually dislike her for, you know, they don't like her character or whatever other reason. But I think there's also a lot of young kids, specifically young boys, who have all of their life, all the TV shows that they watch, we see the superhero, we see Superman, we see all these big, powerful guys. And then we see, we got Anakin, especially in the Clone Wars. A lot of kids watch Clone Wars. And then we see Rey, and I don't want to say this is all young kids, but I think there are a bunch of young kids who are just not educated, and when they see a female lead, they're just like, "Oh, that can't happen. That's not seen. We don't see that in movies before." I don't, but like by no means I don't want to put that into all young kids think this way, but I think that there's some who are uneducated. Um, and I think another reason, as far as her character, in The Last Jedi and Force Awakens, I think her mental strength is really tested, and maybe in Force Awakens it's kind of weak when you compare it to Luke and Anakin. But of course, trying to compare Rey Skywalker, who is well basically a nobody, at least in her eyes, until we get to really Last Jedi and Rise Skywalker, she from like a audience, we're comparing her to the best of the best. So
Mm.
I don't think it's fair for her character to have to live up to those standards. And honestly, I used to be on the Rey Skywalker hate train, but after watching those movies like the past couple of days and really like diving deep into it, I don't think it's fair to compare Rey Skywalker to Luke and Anakin straight out the gate. But what does it mean to become a Skywalker? Um, I think it's someone who has that hope and leader mentality, which Rey gets that throughout the films. It gets better and better by each movie. And by Rise of Skywalker, I think she's at her peak. She is at her most um, closely related to the Skywalker name. I think that's when she's at her best. And I would say Skywalker, someone with a lot of hope and the leader mentality. I think that's two of the biggest things. And there are people who don't think that she's a Skywalker because you have to have the last name, and also they just don't think that Rey should have it because they don't like Rey. And I mean, honestly, my opinion has definitely changed. I think she totally deserves that name, and I don't think it's a lot of people will just not acknowledge that her name is Skywalker and just be like, oh, I'm just going to call her Rey. That's come on, people. We see it in the movies. Let's just accept the movies. I think it's fair to disagree, but we should definitely not just watch the movie and say, "Oh, I'm not going to think that happened." But um, that's kind of my take on Rey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and adding on to that, I mean, I never really talked about my opinion on Rey as a Skywalker. Personally, I do not care. Like she can like I really became apathetic towards the sequel trilogy after The Last Jedi because I really didn't like it. So I was like at the Rise of Skywalker, I'm like, I'm gonna see it to finish it off. But I was never really going to like I had accepted that,
Yeah,
I wasn't gonna
same.
enjoy it. So that whole idea of Rey being a Skywalker, I was like, okay, it's Disney. They own the franchise. They can make Rey a Skywalker. If Disney says that Rey is a Skywalker, then Rey is a Skywalker. Like
Right.
there's nothing you can really say against that. And so I think that a lot of the people like screaming Rey isn't a Skywalker, they're your typical like 12-year-old trolls who are on TikTok. And at least that's the majority of them. Like I don't think there are a lot of people who there isn't an argument to why she isn't a Skywalker unless you're going to argue, oh, she isn't a Skywalker from blood. But, she's kind of adopted into the Skywalker family. She says she's a Skywalker, and then Luke and Leia appear before her. So by any means, she's a Skywalker, And I might not like the direction they took by making her a Skywalker, but,
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
fair to disagree with the character route that they
yeah,
took with her, but just
Totally.
not acknowledging it, like, come on.
yeah,
That's the only thing I would say. Just acknowledge what happened.
yeah.
Okay. And also, I have to shout out TTVV Claps because just donated to the stream, and I'm stunned. I'm really happy
Nice.
because I started this in May. I don't know what I'm doing here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm just having fun talking Star Wars with people and like conversation like this where I can dig in and like where we all have different views and stuff. And look, because all four of us are on completely different sides of this, which it seems like super cool. But anyways, thank you so much. Yeah, it's crazy. And anyways, yeah, I think it is. oftentimes it can be very unfair how some people view Rey. And her struggle, again, it's not physical. It's her struggle is entirely emotional. It's trying to find her place, knowing where she belongs. She defines herself by a family she's waiting for, but doesn't know who they are, and she's incomplete and unable to move forward until she finds out. And if you contrast that to the end, where she has a found family that is all dead. they're gone, and her and Ben were quite literally soulmates, you know what I mean, like in the greatest sense of the word. Now them being in a relationship is weird to me. I'm not a Raylo myself, because I don't know if you guys read Spider-Man with Spider-Man and Silk, because they were bit by the same spider. They have this weird connection that's disgusting, and it's not natural. They wouldn't be with each other were it not for this connection. And I that's how I feel about them too.
Or like Harry Potter with Harry and Voldemort, I guess.
To be honest, I've never read or seen any of them. So
Any of them? Not a single one?
The truth comes out.
Oh my.
I'm sorry. Don't judge me. Everyone in the chat, please don't cancel me. Anyways,
He listens to a bazillion Star Wars
They're already on it.
audiobooks, but has never listened to Harry Potter.
I can't, because there's so many Star Wars audiobooks. Also, I'm a little bummed, Ryan Kramer, because I did a Legends episode last night, and I didn't know how deep you were into Legends. I would have had you on.
No, it's fine.
You know, I'm 128 Legends book deep myself, so I'm right there with you. Anyways, I forgot where I was going with this. I did have my troubles with Rey at the beginning, and again, it was me seeing other people's connection that really got me on board. I was following Ben's story, and I'm actually really curious what this trilogy would look like if it were told from Ben's perspective, because I feel like all of the conflict and all the things that we wanted to see in the main character happened to Ben. You know, the losing the fights and stuff, that happens to Ben. You know, the physical scarring and all that stuff happens to Ben. I'm curious what it looks like if we were to see this from Ben's perspective. I think that might be a very interesting thing.
I would love that.
To
see.
And also, again, I don't think it's fair to label people as misogynist because they don't like Rey. But I will say that there are times where people's criticism is so inconsistent that it's hard not to think that. You know what I mean? You know, if I say I hate ranch dressing, which is true, I do hate ranch dressing, and then you see me dipping my pizza in ranch, you'd be like, hey man, it's not ranch dressing that you don't like, it's something else. What is the common denominator? And then that's where it goes.
To me, at least, if you argue that Anakin isn't a Gary Stu in The Phantom Menace, and then go on to say that Rey is a Mary Sue, like you can't argue those two. Like you can't argue against. Like you can't believe one and not believe the other. If you're gonna believe one, you kind of have to follow the other, at least. And most people, if you're a prequel lover and you love everything prequels, if you're gonna call Rey a Mary Sue, you have to look back at what little Anakin does in The Phantom Menace.
And also to your point, you can't say that Rey is overpowered and like Starkiller. You can't do both.
You can't.
Starkiller pulls a freaking Star Destroyer.
I know.
Through a planet.
I love Starkiller. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you can't say, well, I don't like overpowered characters, except this one, because again, what's the common denominator? But awesome. I truly love this conversation that we're having. The next thing is I want to ask, like, is there any message for the community that you guys think needs to be heard? And also, I know I'm guilty of some of the stuff or some of the problems. I want to know what I can do better personally as a creator. If you guys, if I've offended you guys or anything in my process, because there are times where people will post something and it's factually incorrect, and I see it so often that it bugs me, and so I know I'm guilty of some of the stuff. So I do apologize if I've done that to you. But yeah, and then real quick, I actually, before asking the question, want to share something beautiful that, again, Victoria Vane, I keep quoting her on this episode, but
Wonderful human.
she is a wonderful human. But one of the examples that she said today, and I'm never going to forget this. I'm also slightly changing and adding to it. But let's say your grandfather like has this beautiful like pocket watch, and he gives it to you. Now, you can value it because you love your grandpa. This, by the way, this is my message to the community, but you can let me know if I should change this example. You can love it because you love your grandpa. Someone that worked for the same company can love it, or your grandpa loves it because it signifies his hard work over all these years. A collector might love it because it's old and it's valuable. But if you're a techie like me and you're like, this is an old pocket watch, it's taking up room, I'd rather go digital. It's trash to me. I don't want it. It's the same thing, different views, all these people. But if you know that this person loves it because it was their grandfather's, don't be an asshole. You know what I mean? It may be trash to me, but I don't have to say that to you because that may not go over well, at all. All right. That being said, for everyone else, anything you want the community to hear, and if there's anything I should be cognizant of in order to be better. I want to say I started with Shaylee last time. So, no, Shaylee, you start. I started with Ryan, the other Ryan. So, Shaylee.
Okay. The two things that I've been thinking about the most lately, just focus, like, let's try to focus on what we love more than what we hate. It's like the Last Jedi quote. And I think the community would be a lot better overall, like, if we celebrated what we do like. I'm not saying you can't critique ever, but, like, I'm just saying, like, you should put more love into the community than hate. That makes sense. And also, oh gosh, what was my second one? Oh yeah, just because you don't relate doesn't mean that it's a bad character or a bad movie. That's it. Because there's so many people that like come and comment and they're like, trash, it's trash, it's trash. And I'm like, just because you don't like it doesn't make it trash. So that's just my two things that I would want everybody to like take and think about and look at your content. Think about what you're putting out there in your comments. And I think the community will be a lot better for it. I have no critiques for you. You do great.
Okay. I don't believe you, but
Take my compliment.
Ryan, your thoughts?
Me, Ryan, or?
Yes.
All right. So
Here we go again.
my thoughts. Personally, like for Star Wars fans, I don't like the sequels at all, guys. But for you guys that don't like the sequels, please stop like making such a big deal out of like the most useless things. Like, does it really matter that much if Rey is a Skywalker or not? Like, I get that Luke and Anakin were Skywalkers and stuff like that, and you might want their legacy to be more, but does it really matter? Like, I see a bunch of Star Wars pages, it's just this comment and video back and forth of people calling Rey not a Skywalker, and it's just like, it's kind of like a waste of time, guys. So if you're a sequel person, stop saying like the sequels aren't canon, because officially in Disney's eyes, they are canon, and that's all that matters. So no matter how much you like or hate the sequels, they're always going to be canon. You can like that or hate it, but it's just kind of the truth. And personally, like, I don't know, like criticism for Brandon's work, I really enjoy his videos. I watch all of them. I look at his page, even rewatch some of his videos if I'm looking for one to get a Star Wars question answered. But personally, like sometimes like when you talked about like the interviews, especially the John Boyega and Daisy Ridley one, personally, I understand why like you could argue that those things were taken out of context, but I think there is context to those interviews that does matter. And I think that you could make arguments based off those interviews that certain things weren't planned or certain things weren't as drawn out as some people would like them to be. And I just think that there is a certain argument to be made that the sequels weren't this grand vision and that they were more of a let's make things out while we go along sort of idea. That was kind of like just the thing, and why people are so quick to jump on these interviews and believe them, because to them all the evidence that they've kind of gathered from the movies at least points towards the sequels kind of being a disorganized, I don't want to say mess, but just like a disorganized, like kind of incoherent structure overall. And it's just like, that's my opinion on it, like why people would jump on those things so fast and stuff like that.
Okay. And I actually agree with you. Because like, yeah, I completely agree, and I will definitely take that with stride. And then other Ryan.
Yeah, so I really like that comparison you made, I think yesterday, about the restaurant one. I think that is like a brilliant comparison. So we have a menu, just pull from the menu that you want. I'm a prequel fan, so if I go to say the said restaurant, I'm gonna pull from the prequel menu, whereas someone else might pull from the sequel menu. So they're all there. They're not going anywhere. Just take from what you want, and then you're good to go. But I think we can seriously get into good discussions with other people when you, instead of just bashing what they're saying, actually say, well, why do you like the sequel so much? What is your number one reason why you like them? And then you'll get an answer. Hopefully it's going to be an actual answer. Then you start a discussion, and then you start understanding one another and earning that respect, rather than just saying some witty comment that's really disrespectful, and then you get a bunch of upvotes on it, because that's unfortunately how social media works. You say something negative and people like it, but in the Star Wars community, people could definitely change that. That's what I would, yeah.
Awesome. No, I certainly love it. And then for me, I will say, so there's something that happens, and it happens on both sides, and it kills me whenever I see it happen. When people don't understand what an opinion is, it hurts me inside. When and I feel like it's because people may have heard something, understood it backwards, of like, no, you can't prove an opinion to be false or true. That's correct information, but it's because if it can be proven true or false, it's not an opinion. It's
right.
You know what I mean? Like it's the other way around. And so and I see it on both sides. And again, it's when I hear people say things that are very how do I put it? I mean, again, only Siths speak in absolutes. But if you come and you tell me, if you say sequels aren't canon, right, or there's certain things that you can say because of a misunderstanding of what an opinion is, I honestly think either you might be dumb. Like I'm not trying to be mean, but like if you say I hate Rey because she had no story whatsoever, and like, but even if your story doesn't change, you still had a story, and if you watch the first movie and the last movie, your story obviously changes. So if either you're saying this to try and emphasize your point, which a lot of people do, and it shouldn't, and it doesn't lead to any productive thing, or you honestly don't believe that it exists, and to me that means you didn't understand what you were watching. And that's not meant as an insult. It's just sometimes when people say certain things. So I've had to actually stop, because before I was one of the problems. You know what I mean? People say like, oh, well, you clearly didn't understand the film. Until Mesa Windu, Joshua Jackson, was like, stop saying that we didn't understand it. I understand it. I just didn't like it. And like,
Yeah.
that's absolutely fair. Like if your statement shows you don't understand it, then I have to question it. But I also, that's something have stopped doing. And I do want to be the best creator I can be. Again, the sequels are my least favorite, but I at least try to present them fairly. I don't critique them a lot. This is the first time I'm openly critiquing them. And I don't do it because oftentimes it leads to your comments being like a real crap show. So I try not to do it. But yeah, I do have plenty of critiques, plenty of them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me on this discussion. This has been really cool. Like,
Yeah, it was
I don't
awesome.
know.
Great.
So yeah, I'm curious if you guys have any closing thoughts, as well as where can we find you and your stuff. Start with Shay. So Ryan Kramer.
I'm going to start a TikTok. I'm really busy IRL. So, starting a TikTok has always been like, something that I want to do, start a Star Wars TikTok, but something that like, I don't know if I'm going to do. I used to do Lego stop motions on YouTube when I was like a little kid, but I kind of moved past that. A bunch of people have said, like my friends and stuff, all my videos are privated now, but they've said like you should do Star Wars stop motions on TikTok. And I've said, okay, yeah, I might start doing those and stuff like that. And so it's just like, I'm just like afraid that, you post something, a lot of things, and then they just like flop for a while. And I really don't want to like get into like really putting work into videos for them only not to do well because other people's like face bobbing videos like take over everyone's For You pages.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Hear
that's
that
just
damn
my
song
thoughts.
again. I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah. It gets to the point where I'm like
Stop.
scrolling through my For You page. It's like I like all the Star Wars videos I can. Please give me more Star Wars content.
Please.
And it's just like I get another video of Bella Thorne or not Bella Roach
Oh,
shaking her head
Roach.
up and Bella Roach or whatever.
We know
Shaking her
you're
head
not.
up and down. Like I have no problem with you making that content. It's just like personally, I don't want that on my For You page. I like all the Star Wars content I can to get more Star Wars stuff on my For You page. So that was just like my whole thing on the matter. But yeah,
Well,
I'm probably gonna start one soon. But yeah, so
I mean, I'm going to start a petition that I'm going to need you to, just considering how much Legends that you've read, just start talking about like 1 minute at a time. My favorite
Yeah.
character from Legends is this. This is why. This is what they're in. All this stuff. I would
Thrawn.
love to see that.
I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Thrawn.
sure we would all support your channel. I mean,
Yeah.
we could, yeah.
And if I do another Legends podcast, I need you to be on it. And also,
All right.
I'll consider if I do like a role playing one, which I actually haven't done myself. But yeah, thank you. And then other Ryan,
Yeah.
where can we find you? Closing thoughts.
I am StarWars.facts on TikTok. I try to post consistently. Also, I do action figure photography. I'm not sure if you guys know the line of action figures. They're Star Wars. They're called Black Series.
Yeah.
They're pretty. Yeah, they're big. So I kind of do that in my free time on Instagram, and I guess that
I think I follow you on Instagram, and I think you do incredible stuff.
Really?
What,
Is it the Ryan's dot photography with the O's as zeros?
I'll have to recheck, but yeah, there's a couple of those types where you put them in the dirt, use wires and stuff like that, or maybe have like a firecracker or stuff like that. Anyways,
I want to get into that stuff. That stuff is that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's consuming. But yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, I mean, make sure we have that so I can post it when we post these, and I would be happy to share it. And then last but certainly not least, Shaylee.
Closing thoughts. All your opinions are valid, everybody. Don't let anybody tell you any different. And I don't know, you can find me on TikTok as Shaylo_Ren. I don't do anything else, and it's just mostly Star Wars and other general nerd content. So don't get mad at me if I post political stuff.
Awesome. Also, Courtney Hughes wants to add that Kiwi is a queen. So
She so is. Thank you, Courtney.
Yes.
Dude.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming onto the podcast.
Mhm.
I could talk to Star Wars fans all day because there's always something we all love.
Yep.
But thank you guys so much, and may the Force be with you always.
All right.
Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
Yeah, thanks for having
Yeah,
me.
thank you.
Fun.
Yep.